Some call it culture, but I think what head coach Dan Quinn and his staff are installing is the Commanders ethos. And that is the reason that excitement around the team is not only present, but it's sustained and it's actually growing as we wrap up mandatory minicamp. That and more on today's episode of Locked On Commanders.
You are Locked On Commanders, your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody, and welcome into today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This is your daily podcast covering the Washington Commanders, reminding you that you can subscribe for free on YouTube or wherever you're listening to this podcast. I'm your host, David Harrison, credential member of the media covering the Washington Commanders for CommanderGameDay.com, a part of Sports Illustrated. I'm here with you every Monday through Friday. Greatly appreciate you coming through for this week-ending episode of Locked On Commanders Everydayers. Appreciate you for coming through every single day. On today's episode, we are going to talk about why Jayden Daniels has been the most impressive player of the offseason so far, but he's not alone in the impressive player category. We're going to answer our 3 questions from Minicamp that we posed ahead of Minicamp earlier this week, but we're going to start off today's episode talking about the establishment of what I'm calling the Commanders ethos. And yes, my fellow Army veterans, that does sound familiar for a reason. If you want to discuss this episode or anything else Washington Commanders related with me, all you got to do is reach out, shoot me a text, and you will communicate directly with me. I can communicate directly with you. If you want to do that, go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnCommanders today. Become a Locked On Commanders Insiders. Then we can have those one-on-one conversations. You're going to get messages from me during practices, press conferences, games, all kinds of stuff going on. And you're going to get content, opinions, all kinds of stuff that help expand us beyond the program here on Locked On Commanders. No hashtags, no downloads, no apps. Just sign up, and then we'll be rolling from there. Again, join subtext.com/LockedOnCommanders to do that today. The Washington Commanders, a lot of people talk about they're installing a new culture. There's a culture shift. There's a culture change. And culture is certainly important. But I think it goes a little bit beyond culture, what we're witnessing in Washington right now. And what I'm calling that is the Commanders ethos. So what's the big deal? What's the big difference? Culture and ethos are not necessarily interchangeable words and then synonyms and all those things. They're actually 2 very different things. And the best way that I can kind of break it down from my experiences is culture is basically just kind of the way that things are done around an organization, right? It could be the battle rhythm, the schedule, kind of how we go about practice, who does what job, what role this really means, especially when you talk about coaches like pass game coordinators, offensive, defensive, run game coordinators, things like that. What does that job really mean? It means something different for every other team. So that's the culture, just kind of the way that we go about doing our business. But your ethos goes deeper than that. Your ethos is kind of it's a set of standards. It's an expectation of not just how we do things, but the way that we do things. And we got an example of what that ethos is that the Commanders are trying to establish or installing here when Dan Quinn made his opening remarks. He wasn't even answering a question. These were his opening remarks at the final press conference at the end of the minicamp. And right off the bat, Dan Quinn really kind of hit me with this thought that I was just kind of percolating in my brain as I was driving home from Ashburn, talking about the togetherness and the competitiveness of the roster being exciting. And to me, it all is starting with the coaching staff, because not only is this culture that's being installed of here's how we operate, but this ethos of the way we operate within those planned days and those schedules and those events. Dan Quinn opened up his final press conference saying that Ken Norton Jr., linebacker coach, Pro Football Hall of Famer, shared a message with the team. Quote, he talked about that love, the connection, that the work. He talked about being some hungry wolves and knowing that's where you make the difference, that you will not let one another down. End quote. That speaks to ethos. Again, culture, here's our practice schedule. Here's what we're going to do. Here's the intensity of drills. We're going to compete during drills. We're going to compete during games. We're going to push each other. We're going to hold each other standard. That's culture. Ethos, you're talking about loving each other. You're talking about loving the job, connecting with each other, not letting each other down. That's where your ethos comes in. And when you talk about ethos, again, going back to my Army days, and Army veterans, you're going to recognize this, the warrior ethos is something that you talk about in the Army and about soldiers. And you're out there and you have the Army's version, but not just the Army's version. Ethos is not exclusive to military ranks. Your ethos is really everywhere. And I think that when you look at all your great warriors, when you look at all your great ethos of the world, what you're really looking for in these competitive environments are a kind of stable of pillars, right? Courage, honor, loyalty, integrity, and selflessness. Those are all the things that I see the Commanders trying to install here. And again, that goes beyond culture. That goes beyond just here's when we practice, here's how we practice, here's what we want out of practice. That goes into how you as an individual perform. You as an individual prepare and you recover and you prepare for your next day. Here, Jayden Daniels talking about coming in at 5:45 a.m. That's selflessness. Instead of getting that 15 more minutes of sleep, half an hour more of sleep, he's getting up, he's getting himself ready, he's getting to the building, having the wherewithal to go out there and go into the bubble with teammates like Luke McCaffrey and go through those things. That's loyalty. Not only is he helping himself, but he's helping his teammate. Going into the coaching room, going to the quarterback room, watching tape with his coaches, with whoever is available, getting that input, getting that sometimes critique, right? That's integrity. That's your honor. And that's courage. Who raise your hand if you wake up in the morning and just say, you know what? I'm going to go get me some critique. I'm going to go get me somebody to tell me where I'm doing my job incorrectly or where I get better. Nobody wakes up and voluntarily says, hey, punch me in the face with how I'm not doing my job well. That's exactly what Jayden Daniels is doing. That takes courage, right? That is the ethos side of this that I think we're seeing. It's not just with Jayden. Just Jayden's a really good example. Bobby Wagner talked about this a little bit during one of his press conferences as well. So during these next 40 days, an NFL player, you've got time. This is the time to go to Mexico to the resorts, go to Spain, go overseas, just go home and chill with the family and a coach, right? But you also have this responsibility to your teammates. I think this is what Coach Norton was really getting at. And this is where the ethos side of this comes into is, you know, you have a responsibility to your teammates to stay in shape, right? You've gotten in better shape, in just football shape, just going through the OTAs, mandatory minicamp and all that stuff. Don't waste it by going home and getting soft, by going home and getting out of shape, even get in better shape if you can. Learn the playbook a little bit better. Get together outside of the coaching structure and work out. I know some of the quarterbacks have talked about reaching out to the receivers that are going to be in their area or indeed this area, working out together. Go through drills. Or you can just chill. Like at the end of the day, that is perfectly within the realm of control of the player. Like if you're an NFL player right now for the next 40 days, you just want to go lay on the beach somewhere. You don't want to lift a weight. You don't want to run a sprint. You don't want to think about a formation. You don't want to think about a check. You can do that. It's within your right. It's within your will. It's within your contractually obligated time to work. But when you come back for training camp, are you going to be as good a teammate as you could be? Are you going to be a part of that warrior mentality, that commander's ethos that this team is trying to establish? Probably not. And I think that, again, you have the excitement that comes in with the addition of the coaching staff, with the arrival of Adam Peters. You have that excitement built again with the addition of some of these free agents. Then you have the NFL draft that brings in the new potential franchise quarterback, some other difference makers, all these things. So all that excitement fades if the practices don't show up to the level people expect, if the players don't perform to the level that people expect. And not only are these players performing to the level that people expect, some of them are even exceeding those levels, especially as rookies. We'll talk about that here in just a little bit. Dan Quinn talked about this also. He said, quote, a lot of people would say this is the end of the offseason program in a lot of ways. I see it as just our beginning and what we can be about and what we have. I think over the last 2 weeks, I felt this momentum shift. A lot of install has been through the first part of the offseason program, and now those installs are going down. You're seeing the skill and the execution going up, and it's been really exciting to see, end quote. I agree with Coach Quinn fully. We had a really good day of practice out there in Ashburn on Thursday. Both Jayden Daniels and Marcus Mariota looked really good, especially at times. So I think you're starting to see, like Coach Quinn said, they're still learning things. They're still installing some things, but the things they've already installed, things they've been working on, every time you see Jayden, every time you see Marcus go through a red zone drill, it's looking a little bit better and better. And that is very, very promising at this stage in the offseason. Quinn also talked about how the rookies came into this thing with a mindset of showing the veterans that they can add to the group, how they can be multipliers, not hindrances. You're only as strong as your weakest link, right? It's cliche, but it's true. And the rookies are often looked at as that weakest link. This group wants to prove they're not. And Coach Quinn says he likes that what they've done so far, and they've answered that task up to this point. He's very happy with them. So again, to me, this goes beyond culture, and it goes into a new version of Commander's ethos that this organization is trying to install, this coach staff is trying to install, and even these veteran leaders on the roster are helping them install. And I think that's the reason that you have not only excitement in the beginning, but excitement that is sustaining and even building. I was talking to one of my insiders. It was family day out of practice on Thursday, and I've seen family days around this organization before. I'll tell you, the family members felt more excited than the family members have in the past. So if it's trickling down to the family members as well, then you know this thing is really kind of spreading through the entire organization. So it's a lot of fun to watch. We started the week wanting to ask 3 questions that we wanted answered by the end of the minicamp. Well, we're at the end of the minicamp, so we're going to answer those questions, including that, yes, Jayden Daniels is ready to step in as the starting quarterback of the Washington Commanders. That and more coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Patience, drive, and passion. That's what it takes to bring home the winning trophy. It's also what it takes to keep your ride or die vehicle alive. And eBay Motors knows that. And eBay Motors is the sponsor for today's episode. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle, but also has everything you need to level it up to peak performance. Whether you're looking for superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, or whatever you're looking for speed, for added power, for more style, whatever it is, eBay Motors has got you covered. They've got over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die. You're always going to find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's guaranteed fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or you'll get your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're going to burn your rubber. You're not going to burn your cash. Although burn too much rubber, you're going to need to go back to eBay Motors to buy some new tires. But hey, that's okay. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay guaranteed fit, only available to U.S. customers. Thanks again for making Locked On Commanders your first listener, your first view today and every day, everydayers. Thanks again for coming through. Make sure you come back next week. We'll have a whole new week. We are not going anywhere. We've got about 40 days between mandatory minicamp and training camp. We are not going anywhere, ladies and gentlemen. We are going to do 5 episodes a week for as long as we can stand it. Now, I do have a trip at the end of the month to Colorado. That may eat into a little bit. 4th of July weekend may eat into a little bit, but at the most, we'll miss 1 episode a week or so, just depending. I will keep you as up to date as possible as I can between episodes. If you still need your sports fix, check out Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So if I'm in Colorado and I'm taking a day off because of it, you can still get news. If I'm celebrating 4th of July and skip an episode because of that, you can still get news. You can do all that stuff. So no matter what, all year long, we've got you covered here at the Locked On Podcast Network. Highlights from minicamp before we get into our 3 answers at the end of minicamp. Highlights on Thursday included Brian Robinson Jr., 2 great receptions, 2 great pass plays from Jayden Daniels to Brian Robinson. One for sure was a touchdown. The other, I think, was a touchdown, but I kind of had a bad angle from where I was in the back of the end zone. There's a lot of players, a lot of we call it trash because it's like stuff to filter through. Not that the players are trash, right? But just a lot of stuff to filter through in the hindsight. But I think the second one was also a touchdown, which the second one actually was the first one. But anyway, Ben Sinnott, rookie tight end, also had a great catch in the corner of the end zone for a touchdown. At first I thought it was Cole Turner, and then I saw Cole Turner running in front of me. So I said, well, if that's Cole, that can't be Cole. And I saw Ben Sinnott celebrating. So Ben Sinnott, great touchdown catch in the corner of the end zone. Much stronger finish to the day on Thursday for Jayden Daniels than on Wednesday. Again, kind of talked about yesterday that Wednesday, not a great day for Jayden Daniels, not a terrible day either. Certainly have seen, worse practices for a quarterback, but some off-target throws and one throw in the dirt, intended to Austin Eckler, things like that. But a lot of the things that you want to see out of Jayden Daniels, you're still seeing checking, you're seeing making the right read, putting the ball in the appropriate place. So even for some of the struggles, quote unquote, that we're seeing on the field at times, which you're going to see that with any quarterback, let alone a rookie, overall, you're still very happy with what you're seeing. Marcus Mariota also had a pretty good day on Thursday, made some good reads, put the ball in some good places for his teammates. So also looking good there. And then Sam Hartman, not so much in 11-on-11s, 7-on-7s, just because he's not getting as much burn there, especially now as we get later into the offseason program. But in some of the drills, right, Sam Fortier from the Washington Post, he and I were actually next to each other. We both recorded. The quarterbacks and the quarterback coaches were just, kind of challenging each other, trying to throw a football into a trash can in the corner of the end zone. He posted his video. Very good video, so make sure you go check that out on his Twitter page. Tavita Pritchard, quarterback coach, made one. Sam Hartman made one. Assistant quarterback coach David Blau made one. So very good competition there. Between the quarterbacks. So Sam Hartman, guys, I'll tell you, watch him go through the drills. Like, the guy looks good. He looks like a good young quarterback. Not going to challenge Jayden Daniels to be the starter or anything like that. Not that good, but I think they've gotten themselves a good find there, and it's going to be really hard for Jeff Driscoll to push him out as the 3rd quarterback of this team. Of course, play of the mini camp goes to Quan Martin, 2nd-year defensive back, had that behind the back interception that he then proceeded to return for a pick 6 despite Sam Cosmi's best effort. So let's get into our answers for Friday. We asked 3 questions, or we had 3 questions that we wanted answered. Question number 1, is Jayden Daniels ready to be the starting quarterback for the Washington Commanders? Question number 2, who's got the upper leg on some of these position battles? Free safety, corner, receiver, running back. 3rd answer, who's the left tackle? I know it's a position battle, but we want to isolate that one by itself. First and foremost, yes, Jayden Daniels is ready to be announced as the starting quarterback of the Washington Commanders. Now, Dan Quinn was asked about that very thing multiple times this week. Specifically on Thursday was asked, are you ready to name Jayden Daniels the starting quarterback? And basically, Dan Quinn said, look, you're going to see Jayden get first-team reps. You're going to see Marcus get first-team reps. We're going to breed that competition. We're going to give everybody an opportunity to kind of go out there and compete, and we're going to do it for very specific reasons, and that's the way we're going to roll with this thing. And again, I like that approach. I have no problem with that approach, but I will tell you that I have the answer, and the answer is yes. He is ready to be named the starting quarterback of the Washington Commanders. Whether they do that or not is a totally different conversation, and I have no problem with Dan Quinn deciding to wait until they get into training camp, get into the preseason. And like I've already kind of said on this program every day, as you remember, don't be surprised if Marcus Mariota starts at least the first preseason game, maybe even starts the first 2 preseason games. Jayden Daniels gets out there with the second team, goes against another team's second team defense after going up against their first team defense in these joint practices. Because remember, first 2 preseason games of the year, one at the New York Jets, one at Miami Dolphins. Third game is back home against New England Patriots, which means that Jayden Daniels is going to get practice reps against the New York Jets starting defense. He's going to get practice reps against the Miami Dolphins starting defense. So you get to the preseason game, he doesn't necessarily need to go out there and start that preseason game in order to get those valuable reps. He's already going to have them for both those weeks. So then I think week 3, you may very well see him start. Now, they could do it earlier, but I'm just saying, reading the tea leaves, I'm kind of expecting that type of future to kind of unfold in the preseason. So don't get frustrated if you don't hear Jayden Daniels being officially announced as a starting quarterback until maybe week 3 of the preseason. I think that's definitely a future that you could see coming if you're paying attention to what Dan Quinn and the staff are doing. Question number 2, position battles. I'm going to go one by one. I'm going to tell you the guy I think has got the leg up. Free safety, I think Quan Martin's got the leg up. Percy Butler was not practicing on Thursday. No injury reports right now, so we don't know why. He was observing. He wasn't on the bike or, off to the side stretching or anything like that, but he was not physically participating in practice. So obviously he's got something, but it's not super serious either. Should be fine for training camp when the time comes. But I do think Quan Martin has got the leg up. He and Jeremy Chin, free safety, strong safety combination seems to be pretty solid. Cornerback, Michael Davis actually got a lot of first team reps at cornerback on Thursday. So the coaching staff, I think they heard Locked On Commanders where I said Emmanuel Forbes getting all the first team reps. So I think he's probably got the leg up on that competition. So they said, hey, we need to throw Michael out there. That's obviously not why they made the decision they did. But I do still give the advantage right now to Emmanuel Forbes. I think he's getting a lot of this work. 1, because they want to see him. 2, obviously he's a first round draft pick, so they kind of got to do their due diligence, give him the opportunities. But guys, he looks good. He's around the ball. He's making aggressive plays. He's part of this aggressive defense. Again, it's hard, without pads, without full physicality and all that stuff to really gauge how much of a step he's taken. But I do think that Emmanuel Forbes looks much improved, or looks improved at least from last year. And I think that right now, if you had to lock down a depth chart, he's going to be the guy. Now, earlier this month, I said that would be Michael Davis. So again, this is probably the closest competition that we're going to be watching during training camp. But right now, I do give Emmanuel Forbes that leg up. Third receiver, right now, I'm going to go with Luke McCaffrey as the third receiver, just because I'm seeing them do a lot of more versatile things with him. He's working outside. He's working inside. We've kind of, people have been talking about he's taking handoffs after practice. So we haven't seen that necessarily in the 7-on-7s or 11-on-11s. Again, grain of salt. I haven't watched every single snap of the 7-on-7s either, because there's a lot of stuff going on the practice field. But I haven't personally seen Luke take a run, a carry yet in those situations, but have seen him taking plenty of carries or handoff drills, on the side with coaches. Also, Kaz Allen doing the same thing. Kazmir Allen also getting some handoff training on the side. Third running back competition, Chris Rodriguez and Jeremy McNichols. I think that is a battle to watch as we get into training camp. I give the leg up to Chris Rodriguez, but Jeremy McNichols is a guy that knows Anthony Lynn well. He's been in the NFL for a little while. He's got that experience. So that's going to be an interesting battle to watch as well. And then answer at left tackle, that is the hardest one to answer, to be quite honest with you. And personally, I think right now I got to give Cornelius Lucas the edge, but I think it's by a nose, to use a racing terminology. That is going to be easily that and this cornerback situation. They think those two position group battles are going to be the most interesting. And then again, at left guard, Michael Dieter getting some first team reps, Nick Allegretti getting some first team reps. I think Nick Allegretti ultimately becomes that guy, but we also obviously have to watch the competition going on there. So those are our 3 answers to the 3 questions we posed before minicamp, now that we have wrapped minicamp. Next up, why Jayden Daniels, the teammate, has been the best surprise of the offseason workout program this year. That's next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Wrapping up today's episode of Locked On Commanders. Thanks again for making Locked On Commanders your first listen, your first view today and every day. Surprises of the offseason workout program, rookie camp, OTAs, mandatory minicamp. We've got 7 practices total that we've seen from this team. And I will say that I have been most impressed by quarterback Jayden Daniels. And I know we talked about Jayden Daniels a lot just because he's a quarterback, number 2 overall draft pick. But while I agree and I love hearing all the professionalism stuff, the fun-loving stuff, his ball placement, most of his throws, his manipulation of the defense, his athleticism. Honestly, what's really impressed me the most about Jayden Daniels is his interaction with his teammates, especially quarterback Sam Hartman. That is a trip to watch those two kind of egging on each other, pushing each other, competing against each other. It really looks like just a true, genuine friendship on the practice field. And that, to me, speaks volumes to a guy who's really kind of known as being this low-key player. When you go back through the draft process, and not a lot of Commanders fans were buying into this, so I really appreciated that. But there were some kind of reminiscing of talks of like Arizona State. If you don't remember, when Jayden transferred out of Arizona State, some of his teammates, you know, there was like a viral video out there of them basically dogging him as a quarterback and being like, he sucks anyway, let him go to LSU and all these things, right? And you always, I don't want to say you should, but people always kind of have this like nagging feeling in the back of their mind. They're like, well, you know, like, was this dude like not a dude that they really liked or whatever? I chalk it up. Honestly, I think it's just a lot of jealousy and a lot of kind of, you know, the whole transfer portal thing wasn't as popular as it is now. And I think a little bit of that was hurt feelings. But then you go to LSU, and I remember the LSU bowl game, like when he didn't play and his backup went out there, and there were a lot of people who were like, look, they didn't even miss Jayden. They didn't even care that he wasn't out there. They were happy for the new guy and everything else. So there have been some questions kind of just about how he connects with teammates and all that stuff. So seeing him connect with his teammates on the field, but then back on the field, his ability to check in successful plays. Not only are we seeing him check, not only are we seeing him making adjustments at the line of scrimmage when he's reading the defense, but they're being successful, right? They're turning into opportunities for the offense to produce. So you like the way that he's seeing the field. Coach Quinn did tell us on Thursday that Jayden is further along in understanding protections, checks, reads than he should be at this stage for a rookie quarterback. For as much experience as he does have, that Jayden is advanced, which is a testament to him, obviously, as a quarterback, but also the other quarterbacks that have been helping him prepare and study, the coaches, obviously. And I mean, you go back to those 5:45 a.m. walkthroughs of Luke McCaffrey, the film studies, right? It's a testament to kind of everybody who's a part of this quarterback development process. Another thing that's really stood out to me this offseason workout program period, position versatility, right? Luke McCaffrey and Kaz Allen taking handoffs. We talked about that here just a little bit today's episode, but I think that's really indicative of this coaching staff saying, look, we're going to look at where we can use guys. Luke McCaffrey was looked at as a big slot coming out of Rice. That's where they used him the most. A lot of people said that's where he's going to be used in the NFL. When he was drafted, I had a lot of questions for people saying, is Luke McCaffrey really just a slot guy? Because Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson also thrive in the slot as well. I've seen Luke McCaffrey work from the outside plenty. I've seen him start in the slot, motion outside, start outside, motion inside. This coaching staff is going to move people around a lot. And then you see that he's doing work with coaches after practice, taking handoffs, securing handoffs. So you even have that possibility out there. Emmanuel Forbes going out there fielding punts. And look, I know every day, as you know, I've already said, I don't think it's an idea that's going to work. I don't foresee it being successful if they try it. All those things. Look, I am not a perfect human being. I have been wrong before. I will gladly be wrong here. If Emmanuel Forbes turns out to be a top shelf punt returner, I will happily eat that crow. And anybody who wants to throw that in my face could certainly do that, and I will accept it willingly. But the coach staff, bottom line, is looking for that position versatility, trying people out in new and unique ways, and I'm here for it every day, including twice on Sundays. And then finally, not rushing to name a starter. We've already kind of talked about this, but I look back at Caleb Williams, Chicago Bears. Like, not only is there no competition there, like there's really no backup to have competition with. And then the Minnesota Vikings, for whatever reason, wrapping up their mini camp, they decided to name Sam Darnold their starting quarterback entering training camp. So for the next 40 days, Minnesota Vikings media, national media, is going to talk about whether or not J.J. McCarthy was worth the first-round pick they did. Is it too early to call him a bust? Is Sam Darnold really going to be that much better? Is it a 49ers Kyle Shanahan effect? All these other things. And then as soon as you enter training camp, it doesn't, like Sam Darnold throws 3 interceptions in one practice. Is it time to bench him for J.J. McCarthy, right? The great thing about Washington is you don't have those conversations right now because nobody is the starter. And that's what this coaching staff from a man, quarterback coach, quarterbacks themselves, head coach, every single person said, there's no depth chart. There are no starters. And you've got coaches saying there's not only 11 starters, there's 18 starters, right? And I know that was on defense, but the mentality of this staff has been, we're not just worried about one dude. We're not just worried about 11 dudes. We're about all of these dudes. We're about all the coaches, all the people. Everybody's a part of this. I know the team actually has had a meeting with people who are not necessarily in the football operations, talking about how this is the everybody. You talk about the Commanders ethos, right? It takes everybody. Everybody is an important part of what we're doing here, no matter what your role is in the staff or with the organization. So again, you see teams like, again, the Minnesota Vikings announcing their starter. I know the Chicago Bears is kind of a foregone conclusion. They could have announced that starter at the end of January and nobody would have been surprised. But I like the approach that they're taking, and they're doing it in a way that's not stirring up a bunch of unnecessary controversy, unnecessary conversations about who's doing what and who deserves what and all these other things. So I'm a fan of it. Hopefully, and so far it looks like Commanders fans are being very patient with it. Coming up on Monday, we're going to have more coming out of this offseason workout program. We got a lot to talk about still before the start of training camp coming up in about 40 days, as Dan Quinn said. So make sure you come back for that. In the meantime, if you've got questions or comments, throw them down in the YouTube comment section or text me directly by becoming a Locked On Commanders Insider. Go to joinsubtext.com/Locked On Commanders to get in on that fun today. Also, make sure you're checking out Locked On Sports Today, the first ever 24/7 live streaming sports channel on YouTube. And as always, thank you for making Locked On Commanders your first listen or your first view today and every day. Every day, thanks for coming through on a regular basis like you do. Until we speak again, if you're out and about, please be safe, be kind. We'll see you next time right back here for another episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.